Let's do it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today on Dave's Friday Happy Hour. We've got an extremely special guest today that I'm very excited about, Ian Hartitz with PFF, and then joined by Fantasy Intervention's own Stephie Smalls right here. Ian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let everyone know where we can find you, what you got going on right now, and what we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the pod, man. You can find me on Twitter at iHartitz, Hartitz, kind of a tricky last name to pronounce. I get it. But yeah, PFF, the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, usually 2 episodes per week right now. But this February, I'm going to be doing a 32 pods in 32 days series with a beat writer from every NFL team. Keep an eye out for that. Usually got 3 or 4 articles out per week as well. So yeah, thanks for having me on the pod. Excited to go through some, I feel like last week it's just all AFC NFC championship. So I like the variety we got in store. Looking ahead a little bit more.
Right. I'm not a big guy on those small DFS slates. I try to stay away from those. So I'm definitely going to be watching football and enjoying football this weekend, but I'm not going to be playing a lot of DFS. I am already recalibrating my sights to the 2021 season and trying to get ahead of the curve. Steph, why don't you let everyone know what you got going on right now? I know you've got an article that you're working on that should be coming out any day now.
I know. I am working on a Sterling Shepard article and why you shouldn't get rid of him, because there's hope for Sterling Shepard. That's all. And then I have a Zeke article that Dave is not going to like very much. But it's okay. And then you guys can find me at Stephie Smalls with 3 L's. And that's it. Yeah. I mean, we're grinding right now. So a lot of it is backseat. I can't do as much content as I would want to because I'm working on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like my Twitter game has been falling off just a little bit lately, but that's totally fine because we've got big things going with Join Our Circle _, as you all know, Join Our Circle _. Right now, we are actually doing a mock draft that you can tune into. We're making it as easy to follow along as possible. Just one thread, pick by pick. We're working our way down there with the whole team. 14-team Dynasty Superflex. So be sure to check out Join Our Circle _ to follow along with that. Now, Ian, you already said it. You're doing 32 shows in 32 days. You've got a lot going on. Of all the shows you do, though, one of my favorites that you do is the 10 questions with blank. And you've had some pretty good names on there. Michael Fabiano was just on last week. You've done shows with Mike Clay, Evan Silva, and some other big guests. But now it's our turn to kind of flip the table a little bit, and we are going to do 10 questions with Ian Hartitz. So are you ready to get this going, Ian?
I like it, but I must say I'm looking forward to Steph's article now. I missed them re-signing Shepard to that 4-year, $40 million deal. Golden Tate's probably out. That's a great call.
Yeah, I like it. I think one of the things that we talked about, a little sneak peek, is that he does his best when he kind of plays as the number 2 guy. So if Darius Slayton can step up and be that alpha number 1 in New York, that just means even better stuff for Sterling Shepard.
His best seasons were when OBJ was there. That's when he had his best season. So I'm telling you.
I remember looking before this year started. I looked at a yards per route run for outside versus slot, and kind of looked at who was the most sensitive. And Shepard was someone that was so much better in the slot. I think that kind of helped through this year. So with Golden Tate out of town, money. I like it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Love it.
All right, well, let's dive right in. Aaron Jones, he's going to be one of the big hot topics this entire offseason. But everybody's been talking about where he's going to end up, where his possible landing spots are. What I'm more excited about is A.J. Dillon. So right now, assuming that Jones is going to leave this offseason, where are you ranking A.J. Dillon heading into the 2021 season, Aaron? Is he going to be a legitimate RB1, or is he going to be playing second fiddle to Jamal Williams? What do you think?
Yeah, we got to wait and see with Jamal Williams because he's an unrestricted free agent too. I do agree. It seems more likely Aaron's going to be the one, seeking more money, deservedly so. The dude's, been a touchdown scoring machine really ever since he entered the league, and efficiency too. Makes, go get your money, Aaron, especially with running backs these ways. I get it. So certainly would make sense if Jamal's back on one of those, more team-friendly deals. Sounds like he's going to fetch the same caliber out there. And if Jamal is back, it's going to be concerning with Dillon. I think if it is Jamal and A.J. Dillon, it's going to be hard to fit either of them inside the top 20 backs. They're going to be prime every single late round RB, zero RB article is going to be talking about, getting these Packers backs because the scoring upside is huge. I get it. But I mean, what was it this year that A.J. Dillon did to piss off the coaching staff? Maybe I know he had this bout with COVID. So I don't know if his conditioning wasn't right or what it was, but all the whole offseason, they make the draft pick and everyone's talking about, once we get into the winter, that's when a big guy like him is going to be tough to tackle. After that Titans game, Rodgers on the McAfee show even said he believed that And the guy goes off. He plays great against the Titans, and now he can barely get the ball again. So I don't know. He's only had 6 snaps as a pass blocker all season. If Jamal is back, or even if they sign someone else, I just think Dillon is going to be in that kind of not so fancy friendly early down grinder role without many targets. And with the game we play that usually rewards receptions so much, it's going to be tough to, devote a true RB1 pick to it, like you're saying. So not really convinced he's going to eat all the goal line work. I think eventually Jamal Williams is probably going to be the far better value at ADP.
Interesting. All right. Well, I may have to readjust my rankings a little bit. I am big on AJ Dillon, but let's see. If I'm listening to Ian here, yeah, I mean, if it could snow and they could play the Titans every single week, I think AJ Dillon would be a smash RB1. But unfortunately, that is not going to be the case early next season. So I want to stay in the same division. As you can tell, looking back here, I am a Bears fan, so the NFC North is very near and dear to my heart. But I want to jump over to the Vikings. I've been struggling a lot with ranking Justin Jefferson this year. Mm-hmm. We saw how dominant he can be, even as a rookie. But with Adam Thielen still under contract for the next 4 years, is that going to cap Justin Jefferson's upside? Kind of similar to what we saw with Stephon Diggs while he was over there. Are you confident ranking Justin Jefferson way up there, or how are you feeling about him heading into next year?
I was trying to rank some wide receivers ahead of him. I haven't actually got my specific 2021 rankings down yet, but I got to about wide receiver 10, 11 was where I was like, okay, I think Jefferson could fit in about right here. So borderline wide receiver 1, I think he deserves to be ranked ahead of Thielen. And yeah, it's not helping that Thielen's there, but let's face it, most NFL offenses these days have multiple solid wide receivers. It's good that we have a situation like Minnesota where we've seen Kirk Cousins willing to concentrate around those two guys as much as he does. And, with Gary Kubiak leaving now, we're going to have to see who takes over. It could easily just turn into a more pass-happy attack in Minnesota, which would kind of, turn this issue just into a non-issue, kind of how it is. But anyway, with Kirk Cousins this year, if they kind of keep the same offense, which, hey, the defense was the problem last year. I don't think anyone was complaining too much about Dalvin Cook, Jefferson, these guys. But part of what made it work was, again, Cousins condensing it around Thielen and around Jefferson, and the fact he had top 3 average target depth in the league. Like when they were throwing, usually play action, usually down the field. So Jefferson, I mean, you could argue having Thielen there actually helps him just because defenses can't focus on him quite as much. We did see as the season went on, teams started shadowing Jefferson with the number 1 cornerback, whereas Thielen got that treatment. Jefferson was just fine. The guy's a complete studs. Over the last 2 seasons, 120 players have at least 100 targets. Number 1 yards per target is Justin Jefferson. My guy, AJ Brown, number 2. I think he passed every single test last year. It's like the only bad thing we can say about the guy is Jamar Chase was better at LSU. Maybe they're both just absolutely fantastic. Keep buying Justin Jefferson as a true wide receiver 1.
It's funny that you mentioned that Jamar Chase, because that's the same argument that people use to try to put down AJ Brown. And two teams can have good wide receivers. I mean, it's not a problem. I'm excited about Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen's penchant for just snagging touchdowns once they get in the red zone worries me a little bit. But yeah, you said it. Justin Jefferson is an absolute stud. So yeah, I think you got to put him in the wide receiver 1 discussion after the rookie year he just had. He absolutely smashed his expectations and was one of the biggest surprises of the year. Now, as far as not smashing expectations, on the complete opposite side of the coin, we've got Michael Thomas, obviously a unanimous first-round pick, played 7 games. He was injured. He punched teammates. He was arguing with coaches. It was just a mess of a season. But now we've got reports that he's going under the knife. He's getting some surgery, and he played through injuries because he wanted to help Drew Brees out in his final season. So are you buying that and giving him another chance in 2021? What's the earliest you'd feel comfortable taking MT in a redraft league next year?
Oh, I love this one. I'm so excited to hear what you say.
First of all, a little bit weak sauce. And I love Michael Thomas. I'm a Columbus, Ohio guy, rooting for him every day. A little bit of a weak move to get shut out and the next day to go on Twitter and be like, I'm playing through all this pain, leaking at the Schefter and all that. I don't know, man. For one of the better competitors I think we've had in the league, it's like, you know what, bro, you're healthy enough to go out there. You weren't in the injury report. Just kind of take your bumps. With that said, I think he gets so unfairly put into this slant boy, thing that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, whoever started that whole thing calling a slant boy, to me, that's more of a reflection on the quarterback than it is Michael Thomas. I mean, when Michael Thomas broke the freaking NFL record for receptions in 1 year in 2019, only 9 targets were thrown at least 20 yards downfield. It's not that he can't run more routes than just a slant. It's that he hasn't had a quarterback capable of throwing them these other routes. Brees, I think we all saw that noodle arm that was on display during their divisional playoff loss. Amazing quarterback. We're not trying to take anything away from him, throughout his career, but the arm was dead. Taysom Hill, the dude needs 3 crow hops these days to try to throw the ball downfield. So honestly, if we can get Jameis Winston under center, that's going to be the best case scenario for Michael Thomas. I'm not saying Thomas is Mike Evans as a talent, but I think he's in the same conversation. And you look at what Jameis did for Evans, and it was feed him the rock as much as possible. I mean, this year with Brady, I found this cool stat this week. Mike Evans has had 6 games with fewer than 5 targets. This year, he only had 5 combined from 2014 to 2019. So I think in terms of raw targets, in terms of getting down the field more, getting those fantasy-friendly deep balls, Jameis Winston is the guy that's going to unlock the potentially best version of Michael Thomas, which is wild to say because, again, he set the single-season record already with Breeze, but I think he has a good chance of getting, back towards that ceiling. Coming off the injury, though, and with those questions, if it is Taysom Hill, I mean, that's going to be a problem. He'd be a legit, I think, higher-end wide receiver 2 with Taysom. I think with Jameis, though, I would still have him probably right around that Jefferson range, wide receiver 10 through 12.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. A little bit off the record here. Do you think that Jameis Winston is going to end up back in New Orleans next year, or do you think that he's going to hit free agency and finally get paid?
We stay on the record. I think he's back to New Orleans. We'll see what happens. Breeze said after the game, it's your team now, whatever that was. I think Peyton, he's a smart guy. I think he saw in those 4 games that while Taysom Hill can put up those numbers, I think he kind of limits their overall ceiling inside the offense. Kind of similar thing, with Lamar Jackson to an extent. I wish they get him more receivers. That's a story for a different day. But, you have certain quarterbacks that I think, with the right team, with the right coach can, do just fine the regular season. But they just had Drew Brees playing at an extremely high level for 4 years, and that wasn't enough. So I think these days you need a quarterback at a minimum can push the ball down the field with more consistency than someone like Taysom Hill. And with Jameis, I mean, look, 40 turnover worthy plays. That's our PFF thing to account for, drop picks. 40 turnover worthy plays in his first year with Bruce. That was awful. I get that. You know who else had 40 turnover worthy plays in their first year in Bruce Arians' system? Andrew Luck and Carson Palmer. So I'm not giving up on Jameis just yet.
Who got LASIK surgery?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difference maker right there.
Let the guy play. Let this guy at least try his new eyes out. What are you guys doing?
Exactly.
And hey, I mean, we saw it right now. He's got a perfect passer rating in the postseason. How about it?
The kid's not squinting. Let's get this boy fed. Get him on the field.
So we talked about the Saints a little bit here, but let's jump to another team that was recently eliminated from the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans. We talked about A.J. Brown a little bit. I know you're a huge fan, much like myself. I am a huge A.J. Brown fan. I actually just dropped a tweet earlier today. I don't have my rankings done, but I've got my top tier of receivers, and A.J. Brown fits somewhere in there with who we just talked about, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill. That's my top 4 in some order or another. So I'm a huge A.J. Brown fan, obviously. But the Titans ran the ball 51.8% of the time last year, the 3rd most in the league. In 2019, they ran the ball 49.8% of the time, which was the 4th most in the league. So I agree with you. A.J. Brown is one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. But with Derrick Henry just getting the ball nonstop, how high are you willing to put A.J. Brown in your 2021 rankings?
Well, so one thing is, I know Derrick Henry's going to be back there, but Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith are unrestricted free agents. So there's a chance that, we were talking before about Jefferson and Dillon, A.J. Brown could be one of these rare wide receiver ones, like a Devontae Adams, where there's just really no competition for target throughout the entire roster. So yeah, he's in a run-first offense, but if he's the only wide receiver worth a damn, no disrespect to Adam Humphries or, Kalen Ramon or Khalif Ramon, excuse me. But no offense to those guys, but A.J. Brown, we're talking about 150 plus targets, no questions asked then. And it does seem like at this point, seeing those, 2 knee injuries that he had to have surgery for, clearly he was far more limited than we had any idea about, which just brings an entirely new ceiling into play here. I mean, I was bitching all season long about him not having a single rush attempt. Just not even one. I remember against the Saints as a rookie, he went 60 yards just on a simple reverse. I mean, if you can get one wide receiver in the league a couple of times with the ball in his hands in the open space, it should be A.J. Brown, what he can do, just as a yak monster. He shattered the PFF database in terms of yards after catch per reception in 2019. Prime Percy Harvin was the previous leader. Then it was rookie A.J. Brown. And we saw that for stretches, against the Steelers, Colts. Even with those knees, he was running away from dudes. But I thought we saw just a new, just even higher form of him as a contested catch receiver, particularly in the red zone. Overall, 9 targets inside the 10-yard line. 6 of those went for touchdowns. The fades with Tannehill were just going off. So we know he has that big playability. Now we're seeing him just being able to operate even in tight coverage. man, ceiling is the roof for A.J. Brown moving forward. In 2021 specifically, I'm looking at wide receiver 6 right now. I got Devontae, Diggs, Tyreek Hopkins, and Keenan. Those are the guys that I think are just, with other than Tyreek, we're talking 150 plus targets easy. We got to chase that volume in fantasy football. But another situation to keep an eye on throughout the offseason, because again, if they don't replace Corey Davis with anyone really worth a damn, look out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you more. I mean, the fear is if they don't have somebody like Corey Davis, and let's say Jonnu Smith stays blocking again more so than running routes, A.J. Brown, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be demanding double teams. But, he's in that elite tier of receiver where it almost doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. And what you were talking about, how frustrating it was that A.J. Brown didn't get any carries this year. Did your head explode when you saw Jonnu Smith getting the goal line touches? Did you see that? I think it was somewhere halfway through the season. I want to say week 7 or 8, but they were lined up at the 1 yard line and they handed the ball off to Jonnu. And I couldn't believe seeing that, especially with the way that A.J. Brown can run. I'm excited to see where he's at next year. Like I said, I've got him somewhere in my top 4. I'm kind of waiting to see how free agency shakes out. But yeah, like you said, ceiling is the roof for A.J. Brown.
So real quick with the Jonnu thing. That did not piss me off, because Jonnu Smith in his own right is a monster. They lined him up in the I formation in like 2019, and he busted one for like 55 yards. Having those guys like Derek, I remember in high school football, we'd always have like just the biggest seniors like walk out in front, lead the team out on the field to try to scare whoever the hell we were playing. Imagine having the A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, and Jonnu Smith just waltzing in. All these guys wearing skill position players. I mean, they're an intimidating offense.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's a big group of dudes. I want to give a quick shout out to Juan Carlos Pena, who I do my Thursday shows with during the offseason, and he pointed something out actually, and that was Jonnu Smith, how many routes he stopped running once Taylor Lewan went on IR. That almost seemed to be the difference maker. I mean, we saw it, what was it, the first 5 weeks, Jonnu Smith was the tight end 1 by a mile, and then Taylor Lewan hurt his ACL, he went on IR, and then all of a sudden Anthony Ferkser became the guy that was running those routes, and Jonnu was staying in and blocking. So assuming Taylor Lewan is healthy to go next year, I think that Jonnu Smith is going to inch his way back up into that top 1 or 2 tight end tier. So I'm excited to see it. So we talked about a couple playoff teams here with the Titans and the Saints, and now we're going to jump to the absolute bottom of the barrel and talk about the Jaguars. They got the first pick locked in, and they are guaranteed pretty much to be taking Trevor Lawrence at this point. So the hype train for Jaguars skill players has already left the building. DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, they're flying up draft boards. But let's talk about James Robinson. We haven't seen any undrafted free agent like this since Arian Foster came into the league. So do you think that Robinson is going to be able to maintain his long-term value with Trevor Lawrence coming into town? Or do you think we're going to see him kind of flame out over the next year or two?
Probably the number one just off-season spot throughout the entire, months we got ahead of us to keep an eye on here is this Jacksonville backfield. Because if James Robinson is still the undisputed RB1 in Jacksonville come, week 1 of 2021, he's going to need to be a top 10 pick in pretty much any fantasy draft of all shapes and sizes. I mean, you look at what he did before the injury, first 14 games of the year, only Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry had more carries and, more touches than this guy. And it wasn't like he was just out there only getting volume and not doing anything with it. We've seen that happen before. That really wasn't the case with James Robinson. Among a 47 qualified back, he was 20th in elusive rating, 16th in overall PFF rushing grade. We saw that he can function on all 3 downs as a receiver. And man, one of the things I keep track of, throughout Sundays, I'll send out like sheesh alerts and stuff like that to help show nullified touchdowns and, plays that, just weren't really the running back's fault. He had at least 3, if not more, touchdowns just taken off the board by penalties that were very iffy. I'm not talking, just the massive holding penalty that created the touchdown in the first place. This dude got robbed a couple of times. So with all that in mind, we added Trevor Lawrence under center, Urban Meyer, who I know we haven't seen in the NFL, but he, I like the Darrell Bevel hire at least to an extent, because what we have seen Bevel do over the years is really just emphasize a downfield oriented passing game. Could open up things even more underneath for Robinson as a pass catcher. So we got to pay attention. New coaching staff, new quarterback. That could mean they, draft a running back in the second round. We're having a completely different conversation. But as it stands right now, if we go into next year, just with the depth charts we're expecting from this 2020 rookie RB class, you can make an argument for James Robinson as the RB1 of that group.
You could, 100%.
I agree. I mean, long-term, if we're talking dynasty prospects, maybe not so much, but as far as just strictly what we're looking at next year, yeah, I'm loving James Robinson. I made this comparison on Twitter a while back, and I got quite a lot of heat for it, but it kind of reminds me of, I'm going to go back to my hometown Bears, but when they took David Montgomery, or I'm sorry, not David Montgomery, when they took Jordan Howard took him with a 5th-round pick while they were in that rebuilding phase, and they just absolutely ran him into the ground. And he was young, he had fresh legs, and he looked good for those first 2 years. And then once they brought in Mitch Trubisky, and then they started trying to make a push, which obviously didn't work, that's when they put some draft capital in David Montgomery. That's when they brought in Tariq Cohen, and they kind of switched it up a little bit. But that's what James Robinson reminds me of right now. He's an undrafted in his case, but not a lot of draft capital, somebody with fresh legs that can just absolutely run wild when they get him the ball. So I think we're going to see a lot of James Robinson again next year. So Steph, I know you had something to say about the rookie running back. Where are you heading with that one?
I don't even know where I was heading. I'm listening to it now. I lost my thought, but I honestly have no idea where I was going.
All right, we'll just say real quick.
With
some of these undrafted running backs, I think the
running back basically.
You got it? Oh, there you go. From February through April in the draft all year long, we spent 3 months obsessing over these rookies. When let's face it, the team they land on, the round they're drafted is really more indicative than any amount of film we can watch and evaluation we can make on these guys. So I'm not saying you shouldn't go and watch tape on these guys and have your pre-draft rankings, but I think sometimes people get too caught up in what they think of a guy before they land on a team in a new offense with new teammates, with new coaches. Because, it just matters. Like, look, with the whole Dwayne Haskins thing, he played out. He was a bust in Washington. Go look back at every quarterback they've drafted over the past 20 years, and you'll see Kirk Cousins and a bunch of backups. Now, did every single one of those quarterbacks suck, or is it maybe something to do with the organization, the coaches that are around them? So just remember to, hey, pre-draft process, it's part of the process, not the entire thing, though.
Join our circle. Are you guys listening?
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm excited to see what Dwayne Haskins is going to do.
Pittsburgh, baby. Let's get it.
Did you guys lose me for a second there? I think I just cut out and cut back in.
I didn't know if you needed a minute. I was actually calling out our team because I feel like we have some people are so set on these rookies, and I can't get high on a rookie because I know that someone's gonna let me down. So it's great. I watch film, I take it with a grain of salt, and I just can't. I know who's in a general area, but anyone could end up just disappointing you.
But then you also got to be a little bit careful, because then you see guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire that really weren't ranked that high, and then he landed on the Chiefs, and the hype train just blasted out of the station, and we kind of saw what happened last year. So I think it's a mix of both. You need a little bit of both in there, but landing spot makes a huge difference. That being said, I can't wait to see where Dwayne Haskins lands, or I'm sorry, not lands, but if he can do anything with Pittsburgh next year. So another big talking point that I want to talk about, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but this season, it was just amazing how top heavy the tight end pool was. Obviously, you got Kelsey and Kittle sitting atop. The next tier seems to be kind of a hot topic, though. You've got Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. Some people are even saying Hunter Henry and Noah Fant. I know it's early, but how are you looking to break these tiers up? Are you just going to have one giant tier after the top one, or what are you kind of doing here? I mean, it's just there's so many different ways to break up these tight ends that I'm not really sure what to do. So what would some of your advice be for drafting tight ends next year?
Man, I think after this year, Waller deserves to be in that top tier with Kittle and Kelsey. 145 targets in that end of season run he had. I mean, look, I wasn't off Waller, but I was kind of off on tight ends 4, on over this past offseason, just because we made the same mistake we do every year, thinking tight end was too deep, and then freaking October comes around, and it's like, damn, I wish I'd actually used a high pick at this position. But I think Waller deserves to be the consensus number 3, and again, in that top tier with Kelsey and Kittle, because look, they added Brian Evers, Henry Ruggs, Nelson Aguilar, Jason Witten, all this competition, and Waller still was the clear-cut number 1 receiver for the Raiders because he's their best receiver. We've seen it. He's been great with the opportunity. Derek Carr has no qualms about force feeding this guy. So keep going back to the bank with Waller, and I think try to get one of those 3 guys in your drafts, honestly. We're seeing the tight end position, just that gap between the top 3 and everyone else almost widen by the year because there's so few of these guys that are legit number 1 receivers, and I think those 3 are the biggest ones. So Andrews, hey, I know he's kind of been that consensus guy behind them over the years, but I would love to see Baltimore, get Allen Robinson or get a true number 1 wide receiver to put in this offense. I'm not hating on Hollywood Brown. He had a real nice end to the season, but I think he could be so much better as a number 2 field stretching option instead of being typecast into this true, alpha number 1 role. So, hey, it wasn't that long ago we were pretty much wondering, like, hey, can this guy even hit the broadside of a barn with his accuracy? You add Stephon Diggs to the equation. It's funny how, everyone seems to improve around that. So before we give up on Lamar as legit passer, let's try to give him a little more talent at the wide receiver position. But yeah, so I think with the next year, I like the other names you said. The only ones I would probably add, Thomas and Robert Tonyan, they tied for tight end 3 last year, just in PPR points. When you look through the entire season. So again, one offseason addition can change everything, but I think they've earned, top 10 treatment. Then also Dallas Goedert, if Zach Ertz ends up leaving the Eagles, he's one of those guys where, hey, we don't necessarily know who's going to be quarterback, new scheme and all that, but man, just out of the tight ends we've watched over the past few years, whenever Goddard's got his opportunities, he's really stood out to me as one of the best players at the position. So again, I think it's going to be worth paying up for those top guys, but keep an eye on this second class. I'm already talking myself into too many of these guys, and hey, maybe Deshaun Watson goes to the Jets and Chris Herndon gets his name back up there.
Ooh,
crazier things have happened.
It's a name I haven't heard in years.
I have a stickness for Chris Herndon, but we'll see. Never give up.
I already see what's happening. I know that I need one of those top guys if I want to win next year. But I'm just going to be spending the next 4 months talking myself into Noah Fant or Dallas Goedert or one of those guys. I'm going to be like, Logan Thomas. That's going to be the number 1 tight end next year. But
that's legit though, man. I mean, that might be the answer if you don't get one of the top 3. I mean, just yak ability, and we don't know what the pecking order could be. There's a lot of talent in Denver. We don't know if Drew Lock's going to be back, but that dude was banged up all season long, and he still looked all right.
And that's kind of been his story the season before too. I mean, he's 2 years in the league, and his problem really has been staying healthy. But when he's healthy and on the field, I mean, that dude is just an absolute tank. There is no bringing him down. He's a fun player to watch.
He's still really young, right?
God, I think he's 24, I think.
23. Only a year older than Amari Cooper. How about that?
23. All right. Yeah, I think another guy. I hate talking about the Bears too much. I hate being a fan, but God, I love Cole Kmet too.
Really
That's the guy that
right now, like we're talking about tight ends, and I'm a Giants fan. Do you know how hard it is right now for me to control myself and not say anything? It's taking a lot.
You went through how many points was it that Evan Ingram?
35.
35 points this season that Evan Ingram
when I counted with my film, it's 42, but it's okay.
Yeah. Is that something that you guys do over at PFF yet? Look at drop passes and see exactly how many points that cost your team throughout the course of a season?
That's a good idea. I was looking up the other day league leaders and like being downed at the 1 yard line, but I couldn't figure out how to tell if they also scored a touchdown on the drive. But yeah, stuff like that's always beyond the box score stuff. I love it. Yeah, Cole Kmet though, I like that call. I was looking at it, and he was starting the second half of the year as it was. I mean, Jimmy Graham being there is annoying, but I'm looking at over the cap right now, and they could save $7 million. Yeah, they could save $7 million if they cut him before June 1st. So even though they gave him the no trade clause, he'll probably be out of the picture going next year. So yeah, Cole Kmet, definitely a riser. I got him in a couple dynasty leagues, so I hope you're right there.
I'm a big fan of that guy. You just watch him play. I mean, he kind of, you see rookies come in and it takes him a while to get up to NFL speed and strength. And I mean, Cole Kmet's 21 years old and he's already out there just manhandling NFL defenders, like just throwing them with one hand and making it look easy. So I'm excited about his prospects. So the next one we're going to talk about, this one's going to be a little bit more speculative, and it's also a 2-part question for you. Deshaun Watson, when I wrote this, I said all but guaranteed, but who knows? Storylines can change like crazy. But for the sake of conversation, let's assume that Deshaun Watson is going to get traded this year. So the 2 questions I have for you: where would you like to see him end up? Which I think you answered a little bit earlier, talking about Chris Herndon. But also, where do you expect him to end up? So where do you want to see him, and then where do you expect to see him next year?
Yeah, so gun to my head, I do think he's back with the Texans, but just because why would you trade Deshaun Watson because of a GM or something? I think they'll work it out, but for assuming he's gonna be traded, I think the Miami, rumors, where there's smoke, there might be fire there. They have, that treasure chest of draft picks where they could make an enticing deal if they want to give up Tua as well. That's a young quarterback who I know people are giving up on him already, but first year back from a pretty freaking ridiculous hip surgery, he at least showed. I mean, it wasn't like he was awful all season. We tend to kind of look at one primetime game and judge a little bit too much from the guys overall body of work. He wasn't fantastic, but I think we've seen far worse rookie performances than what Tua put together this year. So being able to package him with probably another first round pick and I would assume another top 3 or 4 rounder, I think that would get it done and be a lot more than pretty much anyone else could offer. And hey, that'd be a decent enough offense for Deshaun to walk into with Parker, Gesicki, Preston Williams, hopefully coming back from injury as well. And that's before they use all that cap space they got to go hopefully get one of these great free agent wide receivers we got available. So Miami would work, and I wouldn't mind seeing them there. I think though, and I had a tweet about this. You guys, a question inspired me about it, but I think the Broncos might actually low key be the best fit. I don't think it's possible with all. I don't think they have too much to offer, and with the cap space and all that. But Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, like, come on, we're balling already. That's the best group of weapons that Deshaun Watson would have ever played with. If you look at the full package of just options they have, again, I mean, all those guys are so young. I mean, Jeudy with the drops, whatever. You look at the drop leaders of every single year, and you're going to see it littered with some of the best players in the league. The fact he's getting that wide open, like, he will figure it out. Another one of these guys that, can't even rent an RV yet. They're so young, so he's going to be A-okay here moving forward. Hamler's got speed for days. Sutton, just got injured. Before that, he was looking like one of the guys. Absolutely love the Broncos. I threw the Panthers in there as another one with similar collection of weapons that could be a good time. Joe Brady, Matt Rule, love what they're doing, and then also maybe just like the Rams, because I still believe in Sean McVay, and actually getting to see Deshaun Watson with a defense as good as they have. I think they'd be arguably the NFC favorites if they can get Watson in town. So Miami, best guess if they do end up trading him. Broncos are my wish team though.
Yeah, I think the Broncos, that's something that I haven't even thought of, but like as soon as you said that, my mind just started wandering. Watson on Denver would be an absolute blast to watch.
Mahomes twice a year?
Oh my God, that would be so much fun.
I kind of like him to the 49ers, though. I can't lie. Like, that offensive coaching staff over there, I think with him would be so, like, it's just such a sexy match, kind of. Like, I just think it would go so well for him. It's not going to ever happen with the way that their teams are set up right now, but I love the thought of him on the 49ers because they managed to do so well with they played with like a practice squad this year.
And then, and they were still winning games, but I think they need a change at the quarterback position, and we'll see if they address that this year or sometime in the future. But I do agree with you overall. I think that Watson is most likely going to stay in Houston, but for the sake of fun conversation, it's always fun to imagine that guy teamed up with some top skill players. So after talking about Watson, one of the biggest names in football and his potential landing spot, I want to turn the volume down a little bit, talk about somebody else who's going to become a free agent this year, somebody that I know is very near and dear to your heart. You and I have had a couple Twitter exchanges back and forth talking about him in the past. The best kick returner of all time, Cordaro Patterson, becomes a free agent this year. Do you think that there's any team that can pick Cordaro Patterson up and make him a weekly fantasy threat? Is there somebody that can sign him that we can say, you know what, this is somebody that deserves to be drafted and played in fantasy football now? Or is he just going to stick with his role as kind of a gadget guy?
Short answer, no. But as resident president of the Cordaro Patterson fan club, I gotta try to paint the perfect potential picture for him. I think it is that pretty much the role Curtis Samuel had this year. RB2, wide receiver 3 hybrid. It's honestly what I was hoping Tony Pollard was going to be for the Cowboys before they drafted CeeDee Lamb. There was like a month-long period where that was all I could even think about. I really got to find a bit better social life. But anyway, with Cordaro Patterson. First of all, you said it, man. Best kick returner. Easiest way to piss off Bears Twitter is to call Cordarrelle Patterson the best kick returner in NFL history. Everyone immediately yells out Devin Hester. We're not talking about punts. We're only talking about kicks. And if you look, go to Pro Football Reference. Minimum 100 kick returns. Number 1 kick return average all-time NFL history is Cordaro Patterson. If you get on to 50, shout out Gale Sayers. He's number 1. But, with these more high-volume guys, Cordaro is number 1. But with that in mind, RB2, wide receiver 3 hybrid, 8+ kick returner. I think Pittsburgh could make a little bit of sense if they get rid of Juju. He might be able to find his way into 3 wide receiver formations. Obviously, they need help at running back as well. The Titans join forces with AJB and John, who give them another yak monster, another guy that can walk out in front of the squad as we get off the bus. The 49ers, hey, if one person can design plays for them, it's got to be Kyle Shanahan. I think
fits in so well.
Would that be my number 1? Let's get into San Francisco because Debo and all these guys, just put Cordaro in that same exact role and he'll thrive.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're all almost carbon copies of the same player. Yeah, if you can get Ayuk, Debo, and Patterson all on the same team, that would be a lot of fun to watch. That's something I'd be interested in seeing. I know you and I got in an argument on Twitter a while back. Very, very friendly argument. But yeah, there was something I saw you say that he was the best kick returner of all time. And I was like, come on, man. And I was actually shocked. I was shocked to look at the numbers. I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was 29-something yards per return that he's averaging, which is just absolutely insane. So yeah, I mean, you might have me there. He might be the best kick returner of all time. Just not
it pisses me off when people call him a bust. Like, you want to use the bust label on this guy, the best kick returner of all time? Like, come on, people.
He does it all. And we saw him 2 years ago. He was on the Patriots, and they had just gotten all the way down their depth chart, and they plugged Patterson in as a running back for 2 games, and he looked very serviceable as a running back. He was hitting his holes. He was showing burst. I mean, I love what I see from that guy. It's just for whatever reason, he can't find his role outside of being a kick returner, but it seems like he could do so much more. Not yet. 29 years old. 29 is the new 21.
Hey.
29 years young. That's right.
All right. So the last question here, and we're going to make this one a little bit of a layup. I said I didn't want to dive too much into DFS talk and all that about the games coming up this weekend. But let's hear your picks. We got the Bucks and Packers, Chiefs versus Bills. So who do you have winning those games? And then who do you have winning the Super Bowl 2 weeks out?
Yeah, real quick, one DFS note. You can listen to the PFF Fantasy Football podcast. I just recorded with Matthew Friedman yesterday. It just went up this morning, but we talk a little more DFS. One thing we agreed on is that I think optimal build this week is treating Travis Kelce as your flex, as his number one wide receiver that he's been at 8K, and then go get Robert Tonyan at 3,700, because the wide receivers under 4K are, pretty hit or miss. Maybe we got Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller now with Antonio Brown out. So if you want to go with them, I get it. But otherwise, 2 tight end actually makes sense here, because Kelce, he's not a tight end. I mean,
he's a wide receiver.
He's a number one receiver.
Me.
100%. 100%.
I guess we can talk about DFS a little bit. One guy that's really intriguing me this week, and I know that Troy is watching this right now, and he's going to get really excited about this, but Gabriel Davis, he's the only wide receiver that I can find for a reasonable price that I'm actually excited about. He has been, in this loaded rookie class, he's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but he's been great. So he's somebody in a couple of my tournament lineups that I'm definitely looking at Gabriel Davis this week.
Yeah, him and John, they run so much 4 wide that even having John Brown back isn't really hurting Davis's snaps all that much. He is questionable with an ankle, so we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, certainly over Isaiah McKenzie and some of those other bottom scrapers. I like Davis. But okay, back to your original question. My apologies. I will be riding the chalk with these matchups. Like, I got Packers over Bucks, Chiefs over Bills with the spread. And also, I think KC gets it done, and then in the Super Bowl, I think KC gets it done over Green Bay. I've been sticking with that all year. I just think Mahomes, particularly with the extra week to heal his foot, now that we know he's also clear from the concussion protocol, just too good. He's the best quarterback on the planet. Credit to Rodgers on having such a great year, but I still think Mahomes against anyone. Give me Mahomes. But yeah, with these specific matchups, look, Bucks, they just overload versus the run. They're a great run defense because they devote so many resources to it. We saw what happened when the Chiefs were able to kind of get some time to pass. I don't think Carlton Davis and those guys can hang with Devontae Adams and company another time around. And you look back at that first matchup, it was 10-0 Green Bay before a pick 6 and then another interception down the 3-yard line. So we didn't exactly see Tom Brady have a ton of success against Jair Alexander and company. Maybe Leonard Fournette keeps on keeping on and Brady, has a vintage performance, but I just have more confidence in the Green Bay offense over Tampa right now. And then for the Chiefs, look, the Bills had a great game plan the first time. They pretty much forced the Chiefs to run the ball, even though they did so effectively. They had Mahomes throwing, I think it was only 25 times. The problem was they were at home and they still lost by 9 points. That's how good the Chiefs are. Even when you can kind of force them to do what you want, still not enough. So I don't think the game plan on defense can go nearly as well this time around, because it's just that hard to slow down the Chiefs offense consistently. And then on the other side of things, Josh Allen, incredible year. We have seen lows from him, and that's what makes Mahomes just so ridiculous. Like, you just look at pretty much every start of his career, and his worst case is like average. We have seen Josh Allen against the Chiefs before, and also last week, just not be all that great. So, hey, maybe I'm wrong. I love Josh Allen, Bills Mafia, that'd be a lot of fun, but, Chiefs, Packers, and then Chiefs over Packers.
What about you, Steph? Who do you have on these games coming up and then going into the Super Bowl?
So I am taking the Packers, but I am actually going to take the Bills, because I think that, I don't know why. I think maybe I'm being optimistic. And I think at least, all season long, they're everyone was talking about their defense. Their defense looked fine last week. Everyone shut up. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with their defense last week. You guys can complain as much as you want, but their defense looked very functional. So I think I'm going to go with the Bills in this one. I think that Patrick Mahomes, regardless, I looked at the injury, both of his injuries, and he's not going to be as mobile regardless of how much lidocaine they put in that toe. I don't care. He's still going to have some kind of limited mobility. So we'll see. I think that I think that the Bills will lose if Josh Allen does not hit his target. So that was kind of his problem last week, is that he was I don't know what he was doing. He was rushing the ball out and he was overthrowing the ball. He didn't really look like himself almost. They're almost lucky that they won that game, honestly.
Yeah. I think we're going to need to see some hero ball.
I mean, if he acts like he did last week, then yeah, the Chiefs are 100% going to beat them. But if they can pull it together, then sure. I'm going to take the Bills because I did bet on them like at the beginning of the season. So I'm all for it. But I mean, it's going to come down. I mean, Josh Allen, he was really off target. It was not a pretty sight for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the same thing I've been saying all year. I mean, if you guys care about my opinions, since we're all going around here, I've got the Bucks winning this week, and then I've got the Chiefs taking down the Bucks in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's so hard to bet against Pat Mahomes, the $500 million man. He's just out there, absolutely insane. Well, thank you, Ian, so much for coming on the show. It was an absolute blast having you on here. Why don't you let everybody know what you got going on? I know that you just dropped an article this morning about some DFS slates if people want to read a little bit deeper into that. And then what else you got coming up over the offseason?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was fun. Check me out on Twitter at iHartitz, IHARTITZ. I'll have all the content out there. Plenty of Super Bowl lead up. And then after that, right back into team needs and the offseason goodness. Again, check out the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'll have some Super Bowl preview stuff again. And then 32 pods in 32 days with the beat writer from each team. Looking forward. I found I've now been doing this 5-6 years, I think, full time. And I found, again, we have so much time to go over draft prospects. Like, you're going to have time, in February, March, April, all those months, no football being played. Take a week, look through every roster, see what teams are losing, see, the cap space and all that. Just give yourself time to, look at the current base build of 2021 rosters, and it'll give you, a leg up. I remember last year going through it and just really looking at the Bills and Steelers in the AFC. It was like, wow, they really just don't have any weaknesses throughout the squad. Obviously, Steelers end up being the big one under center that we didn't quite give enough credit to. But again, it's just a good way to, I think, start the offseason process. So yeah, thanks again for having me on, guys. This was fun.
So fun. Thanks.
Last thing before we sign off, I just want to tell everybody to check out our YouTube page. We have been getting those subscribers up, which is really exciting. And then specifically, we've got this video that just came out that I want to shout out. DJ, who is a guy that does a lot of behind-the-scenes work for us on our website. He just came out with this video that is absolutely hilarious. It's called Taste Testers, where he goes through, he makes an entire drink, shows you how to make a cocktail, ties it all in with fantasy football. It was just a great, great video to watch. So be sure to check that out. He's got another one coming out on Monday. And then I also want to talk about the shows that we have coming up later this week. On Wednesday at 4 p.m., we've got Jason Moore with the Fantasy Footballers coming on air. Next Friday at 2 p.m., we have Mike Taglieri coming on for the same show that we did with Ian today. And then the Thursday after that, just booked today, we have Joe Bryant with Football Guys coming on. So we have an absolute awesome slate of guests coming on. Ian, you were the first to kick off this week, and it's going to be a great one from here on out. So be sure to follow us at _. Be sure to check out Ian Hartitz. If you aren't already following him on Twitter, he is one of the funniest fantasy football Twitter accounts out there. It's a great mix. Seriously, just hilarious. It's such a good mix.
And it's hard to listen to them, but yours you can actually listen to.
Yeah, his shows are great. His Twitter's great. And I'm gonna stop fanboying here before I make an absolute ass of myself. But give Ian a follow on Twitter. Be sure to tune in over the next week for all the shows we have coming up. And I am Dave Kluge with Fantasy Intervention. Thank you for letting me in your fantasy life. We're out.